Close your eyes and let the warmth of the season fill your heart. Tonight, we'll step into a magical kitchen where spices whisper secrets, sugar shimmers like powdered stars, and gingerbread heroes rise to face the unknown. Let your mind drift as the scent of cinnamon and nutmeg wraps around you like a cozy blanket, and a tale of courage and Christmas unfolds. Relax, breathe deeply, and let the magic of this story guide you gently into slumber. Shall we begin? In the stillness of Christmas Eve, the kitchen of Madame Sugarspice brimmed with the hum of magic. The old stone walls, lined with shelves of enchanted ingredients, seemed to glow faintly under the golden light of her chandeliers. Spices whispered their secrets from jars. Sugar shimmered like powdered stars. Madame Sugarspice, renowned for her unparalleled skill, was weaving her masterpiece, a batch of gingerbread cookies destined to crown the town's Christmas feast. But tonight, something felt off. The air was heavy, the usual crisp scent of cinnamon and nutmeg tinged with something darker, something restless. As the town bell struck midnight, Madame Sugarspice reached for her prized vial. The essence of Christmas, a rare elixir said to hold the very spirit of the season. Her hands trembled as she uncorked it, a strange crackling sound echoing from the vial. Before she could pour the shimmering liquid into her mixing bowl, the vial exploded in a burst of flowery mist, filling the air with a chaotic swirl of white. When the flour finally settled, Madame Sugarspice was gone. On the baking tray, however, something extraordinary was happening. The doughy forms of gingerbread cookies, freshly shaped and carefully decorated with icing, began to stir. Tiny arms stretched, button eyes blinked, frosted mouths whispered words into existence. One by one, the cookies came to life. The largest of the batch, a stout cookie with cinnamon stripes and a candy cane sword strapped to his back, rose first. He adjusted his gumdrop belt and scanned the room with a serious air. "Captain Cinnamon," he declared, his voice deep and commanding. "Gingerbread Council, assemble." Around him, other cookies began to gather. There was Ginger Snap, a clever cookie with a mischievous smile and icing freckles. Sprinkles, the youngest, whose colourful candy dots shimmered with youthful energy. And Crumb, a burly gingerbread with jagged edges who preferred action over talk. They formed a tight circle, their doughy faces illuminated by the faint glow of the enchanted kitchen. "What happened?" Ginger Snap asked, her voice sharp with curiosity. She peered at the scattered flour and broken vial. "The essence of Christmas. It's gone." Captain Cinnamon nodded grimly. "Without it, Madame Sugarspice cannot complete the Christmas confections. The holiday itself is in peril." "Peril?" Sprinkles echoed, his candy eyes widening. "True peril," Captain Cinnamon confirmed. "If the confections are not finished by dawn, the holiday magic will fade. No carols, no feasts, no Christmas. A collective gasp rose from the cookies. The weight of their sugary world rested squarely on their delicate shoulders. But before despair could take hold, Ginger Snap crouched low, her eyes catching a glint of light. A trail of shimmering sugar dust stretched from the shattered vial and led to the kitchen door, glowing faintly in the moonlight spilling through the windows. "Look," she whispered, pointing. "A trail." Captain Cinnamon approached the trail, his candy cane sword tapping the ground as he moved. The sugar sparkled with an unnatural light, pulsing faintly as if alive. "This is no ordinary sugar dust," he murmured. "It's a clue." Crumb, ever the skeptic, crossed his thick ginger arms. A clue or a trap? "It's our only lead," Ginger Snap countered, standing to her full height, though still half of Crumb's. "If we don't follow it, Christmas is as good as gone." Captain Cinnamon nodded, his gumdrop buttons gleaming with resolve. "Gingerbread Council, prepare yourselves. The trail may lead to answers, or it may lead to danger. Either way, we must act before the first light of dawn." With that, the cookies gathered what little supplies they could. Licorice ropes, peppermint shields, and sugar shard lanterns. They followed the glittering trail through the open door and into the snowy night, leaving behind the warmth of the kitchen for the cold, enigmatic expanse of the unknown. Outside, the world was a wintry labyrinth. Snow blanketed the ground in thick drifts, muffling all sound. The sugar trail wound through frost-covered trees that seemed to whisper as the cookies passed, their branches swaying as if alive. The moon hung low and silver, its light casting long, eerie shadows. Captain Cinnamon led the way, his candy cane sword glowing faintly like a beacon. Behind him, the others moved in silence, their frosted hearts heavy with determination. As they ventured deeper into the forest, a strange sound reached their ears. A faint, melodic hum, carried by the icy wind. "What is that?" Sprinkles whispered, clutching his licorice rope tightly. "Trouble," Crumb muttered. But Ginger Snap's eyes shone with curiosity. "No," she said, her voice barely audible. "It's a clue." And so, with courage as their only companion, the gingerbread cookies pressed on, the sugar trail leading them further into the mysteries of the night. The sugar trail shimmered faintly in the moonlight, weaving through the snow-covered forest like a strand of spun silver. The gingerbread cookies trudged onward, their candy decorations glinting in the cold night air. Each step brought them closer to the unknown, the whispers of the forest growing louder, as if the trees themselves were watching. Captain Cinnamon raised a hand, signaling the group to halt. "Quiet," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Something approaches." From the shadows ahead, a peculiar glow emerged, a faint, peppermint-hued mist that hovered just above the ground. It swirled and pulsed as though alive. The cookies huddled close, their tiny breaths frosting the air, and watched as the mist formed into delicate, flickering shapes. They looked like peppermint wisps, swirling with a gentle rhythm, their translucent forms casting an ethereal glow. "They're beautiful," whispered Sprinkles, his candy eyes wide with wonder. "Don't be fooled," Crumb grumbled, gripping his peppermint shield. "Beauty often hides danger." The largest of the wisps floated closer, its light intensifying until it was nearly blinding. Then, with a soft chime, it spoke, not in words, but in a melody so hauntingly sweet that it sent shivers through the cookie's frosted forms. "What? What does it mean?" Ginger Snap asked, leaning in to listen. Captain Cinnamon closed his eyes, letting the melody wash over him. "It's a rhyme," he said finally, his voice heavy with the weight of understanding. "A riddle." The melody repeated, clearer now, as though the wisps themselves willed the cookies to understand. "Through icing winds and licorice caves, the magic hides where silence saves." "The Licorice Caves," Captain Cinnamon said, his gumdrop buttons glinting with determination. "That's where the trail leads." Sprinkles whimpered, clutching his licorice rope like a lifeline. "The Licorice Caves? But those are just a story to scare young cookies like me." "They're real," Ginger Snap said, her voice steady. "And if the magic hides there, we don't have a choice." The wisps hovered silently for a moment longer before dissolving into the air, their peppermint glow fading into the shadows of the forest. In their place, the sugar trail continued, glowing brighter now, as if urging the cookies onward. "Let's move," Captain Cinnamon commanded, his candy cane sword tapping the ground as he took the lead once more. The path grew treacherous as they pressed on. The snow deepened, and the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it faint whispers that sounded like distant laughter. Frost clung to the cookies' icing, but they pushed forward, following the glowing trail until the forest gave way to a rocky expanse. Ahead, a gaping maw in the earth yawned wide, the entrance to the Licorice Caves. The air was thick with the scent of molasses and something darker, something bitter. The glow of the sugar trail disappeared into the cave, swallowed by its shadowy depths. "Stay close," Captain Cinnamon warned, stepping cautiously into the cavern. Inside, the walls glistened like polished licorice, their black surfaces reflecting the faint light of the cookies' sugar shard lanterns. The floor was sticky, pulling at their feet with every step, and the air was heavy with an oppressive silence. It was as if the cave itself was holding its breath. "Through icing winds and licorice caves," Ginger Snap murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "The magic hides where silence saves." "Silence," Sprinkles echoed, his voice trembling. "What do you think it means?" Before anyone could answer, the silence was shattered by a deep, resonant rumble. The ground beneath their feet shook, and from the shadows, shapes began to emerge. They were massive and hulking, their forms shimmering faintly in the light of the lanterns. Marshmallow Beasts, creatures of legend, their soft bodies as strong as iron, their eyes glowing with a predatory light. "Run!" Captain Cinnamon shouted, raising his sword. "To the heart of the cave!" The cookies broke into a sprint, their tiny feet sticking to the licorice floor as the Marshmallow Beasts gave chase. The creatures moved with surprising speed, their gelatinous bodies rippling with each step. The cookies dodged and weaved, narrowly avoiding the beasts' massive, marshmallowy fists. Ginger Snap led the way, her sharp eyes scanning the cavern walls for an escape. "There!" she called, pointing to a narrow passageway just ahead. "It's too small for them to follow." One by one, the cookies darted through the passage, their breaths coming in ragged puffs of frosted air. The Marshmallow Beasts roared in frustration, their massive forms unable to squeeze through the narrow opening. On the other side, the air was cooler, and the oppressive silence returned. The cookies paused to catch their breath, their icing streaked with molasses. "That was too close," Crumb muttered, his voice gruff. "But we made it," Ginger Snap said, her eyes bright with determination. "And the trail is still here." Sure enough, the sugar trail reappeared, winding deeper into the cave. With a renewed sense of purpose, the cookies pressed on, knowing that the answers and the magic lay just ahead. The narrow passage led the gingerbread cookies into a cavern so vast it felt as if they had stepped into the belly of a slumbering giant. The air was cold and damp, heavy with the bittersweet scent of licorice and the faint tang of caramel. Black licorice vines draped from the ceiling like the tattered remnants of a forgotten world, their tips swaying as though stirred by an invisible breeze. Captain Cinnamon held his candy cane sword aloft, the faint glow of the sugar shard lanterns casting long, eerie shadows across the glistening walls. The sugar trail continued, but its light dimmed as it twisted and turned deeper into the labyrinthine caves. "This place feels alive," Sprinkles murmured, clutching his licorice rope tightly. "It might be," Crumb muttered, his jagged edge stiff with unease. "Stay alert." The ground beneath their feet turned sticky, each step accompanied by a faint, wet sound. The silence pressed down on them, broken only by the occasional drip of caramel from the ceiling, the droplets landing with an ominous splat. The deeper they ventured, the more oppressive the air became, as if the cavern itself resented their presence. "Look there," Ginger Snap said, pointing to a faint glow ahead. The trail ended abruptly at the base of an immense licorice vine, its trunk as wide as a tree. From the vine's center oozed a thick golden syrup that pulsed with a faint, rhythmic light. "It's a checkpoint," Captain Cinnamon said, his voice low. "The trail wants us to solve something here." As if in response, the cavern came alive. Licorice vines writhed, untangling themselves from the walls and ceiling, their movements deliberate and serpentine. The cookies froze as a low, melodic hum filled the air, vibrating through their frosted forms. It was the same melody they had heard from the peppermint wisps, but now it was deeper, more menacing. "What's happening?" Sprinkles whispered, his voice trembling. "It's a challenge," Ginger Snap said, her icing freckles crinkling in thought. "Something we have to solve." From the walls, words began to form, etched in shimmering caramel. "Break the sweet where the silence hums, and the path will clear when the golden flows run." "It's a riddle," Captain Cinnamon said, stepping closer to the glowing vine. "Break the sweet where silence hums. But what does it mean?" "The silence hums here," Ginger Snap said, her sharp eyes scanning the cavern. "It must be the vine." "But break it how?" Crumb growled. "This isn't some ginger snap we can crumble." As they deliberated, the vines around them grew more restless, slithering closer, their licorice tips curling like the fingers of a predator. Time was slipping away, the cavern's patience wearing thin. "Wait," Ginger Snap said, her voice urgent. She pointed to the golden syrup oozing from the vine. "The riddle said when the golden flows run." "Maybe we don't need to break the vine entirely. Just the part that's holding the syrup back." Captain Cinnamon nodded, his gumdrop buttons gleaming with resolve. "Then let's do it." With a deft swipe, he slashed his candy cane sword across the vine's surface, the blade gleaming as it struck. The vine shuddered, releasing a gush of golden syrup that spilled onto the cavern floor, pooling like molten sunlight. The humming ceased, replaced by a deep, resonant sigh, as if the cave itself was exhaling. The golden syrup began to flow along the ground, carving a new path that shimmered faintly in the lantern light. The licorice vines recoiled, retreating into the shadows, their menace dissolving into stillness. "We did it," Ginger Snap said, her voice tinged with relief. "The path is clear." The cookies followed the golden trail, their steps quickening as the oppressive air began to lighten. The deeper they ventured, the more the cavern seemed to transform. The sticky licorice floor gave way to smooth, crystalline caramel, and the walls glistened with a warm amber glow. The syrup trail led them to a towering archway made of spun sugar, its surface glittering like frost. Beyond the archway lay a chamber unlike anything they had seen before. The air was filled with a faint, otherworldly hum, and at the center of the chamber stood a pedestal carved from solid chocolate. On it rested a single object, a shard of shimmering crystal that pulsed with a faint, ethereal light. "The essence of Christmas," Captain Cinnamon whispered, his voice awed. Before they could move closer, the ground trembled beneath their feet. From the shadows, a low growl echoed, followed by a heavy, deliberate step. A figure emerged, tall, imposing, and cloaked in darkness, its eyes glowing like molten sugar. "It's not over yet," Crumb muttered, raising his peppermint shield. The cookies stood their ground, their frosted forms resolute. The essence was within reach, but they would have to face this final challenge to claim it. The golden trail had led them here, but their journey was far from complete. The towering figure that emerged from the shadows was unlike anything the gingerbread cookies had faced before. Cloaked in darkness, its body seemed to shift and shimmer, as if made of hardened sugar and smoke. Its glowing eyes, molten and unblinking, fixed on the cookies with a predatory gleam. In its hand, it clutched a staff carved from blackened candy cane, its top crowned with a shard of crystal identical to the one resting on the pedestal. The air thickened, and the faint hum in the chamber rose to a discordant wail, reverberating through the cookies' frosted forms. Captain Cinnamon stepped forward, his candy cane sword gleaming in the golden light of the chamber. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice firm despite the tension crackling in the air. The figure tilted its head, a low chuckle rumbling from its shadowy form. When it spoke, its voice was like crushed sugar, sweet but brittle, with an edge that could cut. "I am the Sugar Sorcerer," it said, its words dripping with mockery. "Keeper of this realm, and now, your end." Sprinkles whimpered, clinging to his licorice rope. "We're here for the essence of Christmas," he stammered. "We don't want trouble." The sorcerer laughed, a sound that echoed like splintering candy. "The essence belongs to me now," it sneered. "It was wasted on that fool Sugarspice and her childish confections. But with it, I shall create sweets the world has never known, powerful, dangerous, irresistible." "You mean cursed," Ginger Snap said, stepping forward, her icing freckles glinting like embers. "You're using the essence to ruin Christmas, not save it." The sorcerer's eyes flared, and with a sharp gesture of his staff, the chamber began to shift. The caramel floor cracked, oozing molten rivers that snaked toward the cookies. The spun sugar archway behind them crumbled into jagged shards, sealing their escape. The walls shimmered, revealing swirling patterns that seemed to twist and stretch, as though the room itself were alive. "You wish to challenge me?" the sorcerer hissed. "Then face my confections!" With a wave of his staff, he summoned a host of grotesque candy creatures. Twisted amalgamations of marshmallow, licorice, and hard candy, their forms glistening with malice. The creatures surged forward, their movements unnervingly fluid, their eyes glowing with the same molten light as the sorcerer's. "Defensive formation!" Captain Cinnamon barked, raising his sword. Crumb stepped to the front, his peppermint shield held high, while Ginger Snap and Sprinkles flanked him, their licorice ropes taut and ready. The battle began in earnest, the cookies moving with precision and unity born of necessity. Crumb blocked a swipe from a Marshmallow Beast, his shield deflecting the sticky blow, while Ginger Snap lashed out with her licorice rope, binding the legs of a licorice serpent and sending it crashing to the ground. Sprinkles, despite his fear, darted between the creatures, using his small size to his advantage. He tripped one with his rope and darted back to the group, his candy dots gleaming with newfound courage. But the sorcerer was relentless. With every wave of his staff, more creatures emerged, their sticky forms pressing closer. The cookies were tiring, their frosted edges chipped and worn, yet they fought on, their resolve unyielding. "It's no use," Crumb growled, deflecting another attack. "We can't keep this up forever." "We don't have to," Ginger Snap said, her sharp eyes fixed on the pedestal at the center of the room. "The essence is the key. If we can reach it, we can end this." Captain Cinnamon nodded, his jaw set. "Then let's make it happen." The cookies launched a coordinated assault, creating a diversion that allowed Ginger Snap to break free. She darted toward the pedestal, her movements swift and determined. The sorcerer saw her and raised his staff, a bolt of dark energy crackling toward her like a whip of shadow. But Captain Cinnamon intercepted it, his sword absorbing the blow with a blinding flash of light. Ginger Snap reached the pedestal and grabbed the crystal shard. The creatures froze, their forms dissolving into sugary dust. The sorcerer recoiled, his shadowy figure flickering as the light intensified. "No!" he roared, his voice cracking with fury. "You don't understand its power!" But Ginger Snap held firm, the crystal's light coursing through her, filling her with warmth and strength. She raised it high, and with a final surge of energy, the essence unleashed a wave of golden light that swept through the chamber, banishing the sorcerer and his darkness. When the light faded, the chamber was still. The caramel floor was smooth once more, the molten rivers gone. The spun sugar archway had reformed, its delicate curves glowing faintly. The sorcerer was nowhere to be seen, and the essence rested in Ginger Snap's hands, its light steady and pure. Captain Cinnamon approached, his sword lowered, his gumdrop buttons dulled but intact. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with pride. "We did it," Ginger Snap replied, her icing freckles glinting in the soft light. The cookies gathered around the essence, their exhaustion forgotten in the glow of their triumph. But even as they prepared to return home, a faint whisper lingered in the air, a reminder that not all battles are won so easily, and that the sorcerer's shadow might yet linger in the corners of the confectionery realm. The return journey from the Licorice Caves was silent, save for the crunch of snow beneath the gingerbread cookies' tiny feet. The essence of Christmas pulsed gently in Ginger Snap's hands, its warm glow cutting through the icy darkness of the forest. Around them, the trees whispered faintly, their frost-laden branches swaying as if bowing to the victorious heroes. The golden trail of syrup, once dim, now shimmered brightly, guiding them back to Madame Sugarspice's kitchen. Though the cookies were battered, icing chipped, edges cracked, gumdrop buttons dulled, their spirits remained high. They had faced darkness and emerged triumphant. Yet, a shadow of unease lingered in Captain Cinnamon's mind. He glanced over his shoulder, his candy cane sword resting at his side. "Stay vigilant," he murmured to the group. Victory often invites unseen dangers. Ginger Snap nodded but clutched the essence tighter, its glow reflecting in her frosting. "We're close now," she said. "Whatever danger remains, we'll face it together." The kitchen came into view just as the first pale streaks of dawn touched the horizon. The warmth of its golden light spilled onto the snow, a stark contrast to the cold, shadowed forest. But as they approached, they saw that the door was ajar, and the interior lay eerily still. "Something's wrong," Crumb muttered, raising his peppermint shield. The cookies crept inside, their sugar shard lanterns illuminating the chaos within. The kitchen was as they had left it, bowls overturned, flour scattered, and the faint scent of burnt sugar hanging in the air. But there, at the center of the room, stood Madame Sugarspice, her figure frozen in a circle of faintly glowing sugar dust. "Madame!" Sprinkles cried, rushing forward. "Wait!" Captain Cinnamon barked, pulling him back. "It's a trap!" The glowing circle pulsed faintly, and a voice emerged from the shadows. A voice as brittle as caramel about to snap. "Did you think it would be so easy?" The Sugar Sorcerer hissed, his shadowy form flickering into existence near the stove. Though weakened, his molten eyes burned with defiance. "The essence may be yours, but I still have power, enough to ensure your efforts are meaningless." Captain Cinnamon stepped forward, his sword raised. "You've lost, sorcerer. Stand down." The sorcerer chuckled, a sound like splintering hard candy. "Have I? Without Sugarspice, your precious essence is useless. The magic she wields is the only thing that can complete the recipe and save Christmas, and she is mine now." Ginger Snap tightened her grip on the essence, her mind racing. The sorcerer's trap had sapped Madame Sugarspice's power, leaving her a statue of sugar and flour. Without her, the cookie's quest would be in vain. But then, a thought struck her, a memory of the crystal's light banishing the darkness in the Licorice Caves. "The essence isn't just a tool," she whispered. "It's alive. It has the power to heal." Captain Cinnamon glanced at her, his gumdrop buttons gleaming faintly. "If you're right, we need to act fast. The sun is rising." The sorcerer snarled, sensing their resolve. "You'll destroy everything if you meddle with forces you don't understand." But Ginger Snap ignored him. She stepped into the glowing circle, her icing freckles shimmering with determination. Raising the essence high, she whispered a plea, not in words, but in a silent prayer carried by the light itself. The crystal pulsed in response, its glow intensifying until it filled the room with golden radiance. The sugar circle shattered with a sound like breaking glass. Madame Sugarspice gasped as colour returned to her face, her warm eyes opening to see the cookies before her. "You brave little ones," she whispered, her voice trembling with gratitude. "You did it." The sorcerer roared in fury, his shadowy form writhing as the essence's light turned on him. "No!" he bellowed. "This is not the end!" But it was. The light enveloped him, dissolving his darkness until nothing remained but a faint echo, a warning that his bitterness might one day return. As the first rays of sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows, Madame Sugarspice set to work. With the essence restored, her magic returned, and she finished the confections with a speed and precision that only she could muster. The cookies watched in awe as the treats came to life. Gingerbread, tarts, candies, all shimmering with the warmth of the season. When the last tray was placed in the oven, Madame Sugarspice turned to the cookies, her eyes glistening with tears. "You've saved Christmas," she said. "And more than that, you've reminded me of the strength in even the smallest hearts." The cookies exchanged proud smiles, their frosted forms glowing in the morning light. As the town bells chimed, announcing the arrival of Christmas morning, they knew their mission was complete. Yet, as they watched the kitchen fill with holiday magic, they felt a pull, a longing for the adventures that lay beyond. When Madame Sugarspice offered to keep them by her side, they shook their heads. "There's more to protect out there," Captain Cinnamon said, his voice steady. "More to fight for." And so, the gingerbread cookies left the warmth of the kitchen, stepping into the snowy world with the essence's light guiding their way. Their tale became a whispered legend, told each Christmas to remind the world that even the smallest heroes could save the greatest of holidays.